This is Keys to the Shop, episode 463, Tips for Conducting Great Meetings in Your Cafe. Well, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DeFirio, and I'm your host for the show. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. If you would, please subscribe to the show and share these episodes with anyone you can think of that would benefit from the wisdom, the stories, the insights, and all of that we have here at Keys to the Shop. It's over 800 episodes and 7 years now, publishing content that helps coffee shops thrive. And so thank you very much, all of you who have already done that. And now also, I want to let you know that Keys to the Shop is not just a podcast, but also a consulting company. Keys to the Shop Consulting is all about working to find solutions for your coffee shop. Whatever you happen to be going through right now, whether it's related to people, quality, or operations, if there are problems or opportunities that you need clarity on, this is the signal in the midst of the noise. That's what Keys to the Shop is all about, giving you clarity and solutions for your cafe. And the one-on-one coaching and consultation that I get to have with so many operators has led to better coffee shops, peace of mind, more profitability. And these are the kind of results that I want to see for you as well. So if you're interested in working one-on-one with me in coaching for your coffee shop, go ahead and email chris@keystotheshop.com. That's CHRIS@keystotheshop.com. We'll set up a free discovery call. Talk all about how Keys to the Shop Consulting can help you. Taking time to consider the equipment that you put in your coffee shop is not a small consideration. It's something that has long-term implications on how good you can do in the shop. The level of coffee quality that you can get from most batch brewers is pretty much the same across the board, except when you're talking about the ground control brewer. The original Cyclops brewer from Ground Control at groundcontrol.coffee. Great website, go visit there. It has been taking the world by storm. SCA award-winning technology. It allows you to make game-changing batch brew coffee, deeper flavors and possibilities than you ever thought possible. But it also, through its extraction technology, allows you to make batch diced lattes, batch cold brew with 8-minute cold brew, and it concentrates for iced lattes. This is a all-in-one brewer. In fact, the new brewer they have is even better at producing capacity for these batched products. So it's not only making amazing batch brew coffee, but it's creating more efficiencies and profitability in your shop. So go to groundcontrol.coffee to learn more. I think if you're looking to stand out in all of the right ways with coffee in your coffee shop, you should consider getting a Ground Control in your cafe. Again, visit them over at groundcontrol.coffee. So this industry is built on the shoulders of people who have been brave enough to take a step into what they know will actually benefit people, will benefit the industry. Pacific is that kind of company. The Barista series specifically is the kind of thing that this industry of plant-based beverages is built on. They are the originators and they are the best. The Barista series is created for baristas and approved by baristas around the world, tested by some of the world's best craftspeople to make sure that it stands up to the heat from steaming, produces awesome texture, and stays balanced in the cup. So it's focused on the coffee, whether it's a cappuccino, latte, mocha, whatever it is. So you go to pacificfoodservice.com and check it out and see what they have to offer. Get samples. They love sending samples. Try it for yourself and see what I'm talking about. If you're looking for the best plant-based performance beverages for your customers to enjoy, then I think you should be looking at the Barista series from Pacific. Okay, everyone. Well, today I wanted to talk to you about meetings. And in particular, I am interested in just giving you some tips and thoughts on how to conduct great meetings from somebody who has both a lot of success and failures in this world of communication. I've mentioned it on the show before that I've had managers tell me that I need to stop putting new things on their plate because they don't have enough time to actually do the things that I was telling them to do or giving them to do. I've also been able to conduct meetings and communicate with staff in a way that brings them along in a coaching relationship and creates clarity for their job and success. And so Let's talk a little bit about meetings and how this can actually work in your favor. So, the first thing that I want to mention here is people just don't like meetings. And the reason people don't like meetings is because they don't trust them and they think it's a waste of time. The reason they think this is because they don't see anything resulting from these meetings. We have them, and then all of a sudden, all the things that we talked about don't get done. They get forgotten about. Nobody's following up on it. It's a little like that one part of the cafe that everybody sees, but nobody likes to clean. Right behind that big standing plant in the corner. Like, I see it, but I'm not going to do anything about it. People don't trust meetings because they have so many of them, and yet the situation doesn't change. I mean, really, this has a lot to do with how we see ourselves in the cafe and what our responsibilities actually are. If you view yourself as somebody whose job is a very narrow range of things that any other task is a distraction from, then you're kind of missing the point, because even if you're just a barista, quote unquote, just a barista, there is an incredible number of tasks and minutia and little pieces that come together to create the reality of the barista. Of course, this is true for ownership and management. And if you view communication as a necessary evil and not a tool to use for the edification and growth of the individuals in the team, then you're starting off on the wrong foot. This kind of attitude means that we are going to chronically underprepare for meetings, and we're going to actually count on the frequency of a meeting to make up for the effectiveness of the meeting. And so the most ineffective people out there are the ones who have a lot of meetings that actually don't accomplish much, but they feel they need to have them, and they can't wait till the meeting is over themselves. Even if they call the meeting, they're just like, I can't wait till this is over and get back to my real work. If you're going to have a meeting, you have to make it worth people's while. You have to be able to know why you're having this thing and what your responsibility is after the meeting is over, because this will actually build people's trust in your communication, not just about whether a meeting is worth it or not, but when you communicate to them outside the meeting, they're going to respect what you say a lot more, because they know that in everything that you choose to use as a tool of communication, you are taking it seriously, and you're doing it for their benefit and for the business overall. It's kind of the combination of those two things, including the customers, of course. And so one thing that I think you should be considering here is sort of a framework for what meetings can be beneficial for your business. The first of these meetings is called a one-on-one. The one-on-one is a meeting that is not a performance review. It's not a time for you to just talk the whole time and the barista to simply listen. It is actually a meeting that I think should be conducted every week for at least 20 minutes, where it is a focused, sit-down cup of coffee, asking a question to the barista, how's it going? And simply, it's not, I don't even think you should call it a check-in. A check-in is sort of already giving the idea that don't give me too much information because this is a check-in. No, this is an opportunity for you to give the floor to a person who doesn't really have much of an opportunity to communicate in terms of, I'm talking about safe opportunity, really. They are the barista and their boss has authority. This shuts down communication all the time. And in order to counterbalance this gap of power, we need to create a place in our business. We need to craft a time and a space that is safe for this person to talk to us about. It could be anything. It doesn't necessarily have to be about the coffee shop or the way that they're understanding or not understanding a program in the coffee shop, but it can range, because this is an opportunity for them to simply communicate and to be able to trust that this meeting will always happen. This is probably the number one way that you can avoid getting a culture of gossip, backbiting, and all this other stuff, because you will have an outlet that they take seriously. My boss actually cares enough to sit down on a regular basis. This is a sacred thing. Like, you wouldn't think about going the whole day without water, coffee, or food or something like that, unless you're like on a program, whatever. But the point is that this has to be something that you believe to be a core institution in your business, without which you will start courting disaster. When you stop having your one-on-ones and you stop having these meetings, you then start getting this buildup, because a lot happens in the week. A lot happens that rattles around in the brain of all of the staff that you currently have. And if you're not going to treat this one-on-one seriously, I'd rather you just not start it at all, because then at least you're not getting people's hopes up. But most people see us as the type of person who get righteous about something because we read a book or we listen to a podcast, we start it, we say, hey, we're going to do one-on-ones. And then it's all great because you're pumped up about it. But then life happens and you're like, but not this week. Things are really busy. Or not that week. And it's been 3, 4, or 5 weeks. And I have clients who tell me, and I say, how are your one-on-ones? They say, oh, we haven't been having them. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is the first order of business. Get them back on schedule. You cannot afford. It's like not paying taxes, honestly. You have to do this for the health of your business. And that is not, again, a performance review. You, at the end of maybe like 3 months of having these 20-minute meetings or 20 to 30-minute meetings with each of your staff members, whether it's you or your manager doing this, you're going to be able to answer questions. Now, you want to give them the floor to guide the conversation rather than you telling them what the meeting is about, because then it's just you asserting your authority again. And it ruins the whole purpose of this one-on-one. Okay, sit down with them, allow them to guide the conversation, but don't shy away from answering questions. But your position is as an agent of clarity, agent of resourcing, affirmation, coaching, and guiding. This is for the love of the person in front of you. They are your customer. If you're a boss, your baristas are your customers. And the one-on-one, I think, is probably the least utilized tool, yet is the most important one in the tool belt of a leader or a manager. And if you're a barista and you think you need to be having one-on-ones with your boss, go to read Bruce Tulgan's book, It's Okay to Manage Your Boss. This is a fun title, of course. Bruce's titles are always kind of fun. And maybe we'll have him on the show to talk about this one too. That'll be like the 4th time we've had Bruce Tulgan on the show. But the point is that managing your boss is more about understanding that they are imperfect just like you, and maybe they're struggling through motivation and organizational challenges, and you come around and say, hey, I think we should meet on a weekly basis. You would be surprised how many people are like, yes, we can do that. And maybe they thought about doing it, but they didn't bring it up to you. At least you can get it for yourself to get the clarity you need to get the session in there, because sometimes you just can't wait for your boss to do it. You'll be waiting a long time, unfortunately. So bosses, don't make people have to chase you down for this type of thing. But baristas, if this is the case for you, chase them down, not in a way of saying, tisk, tisk, no, you should have done that, but here I am. Thank goodness for you. I'm here to show you how to do it. No, this is for their benefit too, and it's for your benefit. But one-on-ones have to happen on I hope, a weekly basis, if not every other week, if that's something you can start with. But again, reiterate this, you have to do it consistently. Decide to do it and do it. Don't be in the middle. So that's on an individual basis. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, how do I communicate to my baristas things that they need to work on? Now, at the end of that meeting, if there is absolutely nothing else the barista wants to talk about, you could bring up like 1 or 2 things in a very, not like I want to give you a performance review, more like checking in on them to say, how is this going? How can I help you advance in this? If you're worried about talking about a particular coffee with a customer, because I know you talked about that last week, but they didn't bring it up this week, you can ask them how they're doing with that. And that is kind of a performance-based conversation. But again, it's not some kind of an aggressive, like we have 7 different things that we need to go over today with you. This is your one-on-one. Don't make it so formulaic. That's what the floor is for. You can have standing meetings, which are basically just conversations where, like Bruce says, you talk about work at work. You can talk to that barista about the bathroom, about the condiment bar, about their cappuccinos and all of this other stuff. And you can do so one-on-one. It doesn't have to be in public. You can just stand there and say, hey, I noticed this. Like, I want you to remember to XYZ. Or, hey, I noticed that. I love that. And that is very good. And I'm so happy to see that. These are the kinds of communications that we need to plan on having, but usually we just kind of get taken for a ride when we show up in the cafe, and then we rely on a meeting to fill in all of the communication gaps. Communication needs to happen while you're in the business, doing the business. And the meetings are there for sort of a supplemental reinforcement of certain things, or, relationship building kind of institution like the one-on-one. So I hope that makes sense. But you have plenty of opportunity throughout the day to be purposeful and intentional with your communication. It just has to, on the back end for you, be something that you plan. Plan your week. What do I need to talk about, say, or do, or be in the cafe this week in order to advance people, the operations, and the business? Now, let's get to what we're going to call a proper meeting. And that would be what we mostly think of is all hands on deck, all the staff together. My preference is that you have this kind of a meeting for about an hour every month at the end of the month, and make it a meeting that reviews what happened and then what will happen. This meeting should be planned in advance, and not everybody is going to be able to make this meeting, and it's okay. We get all bent out of shape because of this. It's okay. If people trust you and trust your communication and are there and down for your mission and all this other stuff, and they know you have their best interest in mind, they're probably going to show up more often than they don't. But sometimes life gets in the way, and then we start questioning people's motives because we're just kind of like bent out of shape because they couldn't make this mandatory meeting. You want most people to be there, of course, but this also is an institution of your business where at the end of the month we have an all hands meeting talking about what's happened and where are we going, what do we need. And this can be a group conversation, but not a free-for-all. This needs to be a respect of people's time. You need to pay them to be there, their full rate of service, whatever their hourly rate is, but it does need to be given some structure. And the best way to do that is simply to say, hey, we're having this meeting. If you have any questions that you think should be brought up, email me. Do that a couple weeks in advance so that you can include questions in this meeting and address them that actually are appropriate for the team, or you can resolve questions that people have that aren't appropriate for the team, but are good questions and need to be answered. Don't go into a meeting like this and say, anyone have any questions about, stuff? What's on your mind? Like you have 7 people here or 10 people here, and then you give this question of what's on your mind, everyone. You're going to be there for like 3 hours. And then at the end, someone's going to have such a good question and they're going to feel the pressure not to ask that question because everyone's going to give them the evil eye. Like, dude, really? You're going to ask that right now? We've been here too long already. We've got places to go. We're tired, etc. It happens every time. If you don't have an agenda already planned out and you don't solicit questions from your team beforehand and then curate those questions for the team and answer the ones that are individual, that's a great way to conduct these meetings. But again, at the end of the month, you can say, here's where we were. You can talk to them about business. You can talk to them about victories and successes and just kind of bring things up that we all know kind of happened. We're like, ugh, that, remember when that toilet backed up? That was crazy. Give it a bit of a review and then address the questions that were submitted and give people an idea of what you're doing to address those questions if they require you to do things, or the answer you have for that question, which may be like, hey, can we get a new grinder? And the answer is no, because we don't have the money right now. But that's a point of clarity in that meeting that you can include on your agenda. And then what's happening? We have new signature drinks coming up. Maggie is working on creating a scaled version of those experimental ones that we worked on in the lab. And when that happens, we are going to distribute the recipes. We're going to have some training. The launch date for that is this. And so you're telling them, hey, this is coming up. Or we have a big fundraiser that we're participating in, which means, whatever you need to communicate to them that impacts their work. The best thing you can do for your staff is to respect them enough to include them in the details of the business, especially in the things that will impact their lives while they work in the business. So for you, that could be a lot of different things, but that's what this meeting is about. 12 times a year is not too much to invest into this kind of meeting and communication. It brings everyone together too. Get creative. You can do it off-site if you need to. But the thing about a meeting like this is after it's over, the content of the meeting will dictate your job just as much as you want it to dictate the actions and work of the people in the meeting. So if you say there's a new way that we're going to wash windows or something like that, right? You expect the baristas to say, okay, that's what we're going to do. Equally so, as a barista, if you're my boss and you tell me that we are going to get a plumber in to fix the toilets and it doesn't happen for 4 weeks afterwards because we had bigger fish to fry, we didn't follow through with that because we're the boss after all, then we're going to be like, well, there's different standards for follow through when it comes to communication. So you can't just have these meetings and say it's one way. I'm going to tell you what you need to do, and that was a really great meeting because it doesn't have any implication on me. No, your job in the next few weeks here especially is to follow through on every explicit or implied promise, whether it comes to fruition or there's complications. You still need to communicate about those complications. And that should be your priority as much as you want it to be the priority of others who listen to you. Okay, so that's the monthly meeting. The other one we should have is with our managers on a weekly basis. And I think this can be kind of a twofold thing. You can have a one-on-one with your manager throughout the week, similar to the one the manager would have with the staff. But you also need to have a strategy meeting. You have to have a sit down. What are you working on? How can I help you? What do I need you to do? What do you need me to do? Here's our agenda. Boom. Let's go from there. Let's get clarity on some questions that we have. That is what this managers meeting really comes down to, because when you're in a position of management, you're going to have a lot of questions. It's a pretty hard job, especially because owners can tend to be pretty tight-lipped when it comes to how good of a job a manager is doing. So they're constantly questioning, am I doing the right thing? How do I know that I'm actually pleasing my boss? This is maybe one of the best questions. I have a client considering hiring a manager for a soon-to-be open coffee shop, and they said that this candidate asked them the question, or at least voiced the concern. I want to know, this person says, she said, I want to know how it is I'm going to know that you're pleased with my work. How am I going to? And I was like, that is an amazing question. It's amazing not because it's unique, because that's on the mind of almost every employee. It's amazing that she asked it and it had the wherewithal to ask it even before being employed. But you can assume that your manager thinks this all the time. I will tell you they do. And in that meeting, that is the time for gaining that clarity and getting some reassurance like, hey, we're on the right track. Even if it's on the other side of things, like saying we're on the wrong track, I would rather you tell me that I'm working on something that is needless and pointless and doesn't need to be done. Like if I'm working to refine the SOPs related to some esoteric part of our company because I'm trying to find things to do, and I find out that that's not really what's important to you, and you say, hey, let's put that on pause, and I want you to work on this over here because that's urgent, it's important, it's impactful to the people, and so let's work on that, and what do you need from me to help you be successful in that? That's going to be, maybe at first I'd be like, oh man, I was kind of having fun formatting the document, but I'm also going to then say, at least I know that the energy I spend now is something that's on the same wavelength as the one who signs my paycheck, the owner of the business. There's a great need to have harmony here. And when you set up a meeting, that's the result that you want at the end. You want clarity, you want trust, you want affirmation, you want guidance. And we'll say guidance instead of correction. I think there's correction implicit in guidance. And then you leave better than when you entered. Isn't that similar to what we want for our customers? They end up with a cup of coffee. It wakes them up. It makes them more clear. It starts their day off the right way. Our managers should be leaving these meetings with us feeling the same way. Again, we're going to have to follow through though. You need to have a job description for yourself as an owner. And part of that is I need to do what my manager needs me to do in order to make them an effective manager. Now, that might seem counterintuitive to you because you think, well, I'm the supreme boss. Well, I'm the owner. Gosh darn it. I'm the chief vision officer. I'm going around shaking hands and kissing babies and stuff. That's why I hired a manager. No, that's just completely wrong. And if you don't think it's wrong, as you go through a few managers, you'll eventually learn that that's kind of the wrong way to go about it. I know I'm being a little hyperbolic in the way I'm describing it, but the root and the seed of that attitude is one that says, I'm going to abdicate my responsibility to people by appointing people to responsibility. You see what I mean there? I'm going to abdicate my role to be responsible to people by putting people in charge of responsibilities. That's not how you run things. You're going to basically get back from that investment a negative return, or at least you're going to leave a lot of potential on the table. So this meeting you have with your manager, again, it is structured, it's high value, it's about clarity, things that concern their job performance and implications on what you need to do to help them succeed in their role. So you've got the one-on-ones, got an all-hands meeting every month at the end of the month, and you've got this managerial meeting, which is basically administrative, and still a need to have some one-on-one time with your manager. And that could be every other week. It might get a little too frequent to sit down with them every week, twice. But these three institutions of meetings are actually very effective. And I've seen what can happen when you do them well. It creates the kind of feeling that baristas or staff will say, this was the best job I ever had. Because the worst jobs we've ever had are ones where we are constantly questioning our own validity. We are being second guessed all the time. There's terrible communication. It just, in terms of morale, sucks. I could work until I bleed from my fingertips for a place that makes me feel like $1 million. You know what I mean? In communication and everything else. I will pour my heart into that because that's what most people value. And if we don't have meetings in a wise way and communicate within those meetings in meaningful ways, then we don't really have much hope. No pizza party, no let me take you to a trade show, no whatever clever way we think to compensate people will actually make up for the core need of communication. Now, the last thing I'll say here is that there is a need for a performance review. That can happen either every 6 months or every year. But guess what? Nothing in that performance review should be a surprise. It shouldn't. Nothing should be like, oh, I haven't liked what you've been doing for 6 months. Again, we are communicating all the time to our staff. And what and how we communicate is up to us. If you have a barista review and it's time for them to get an annual raise, the things that you bring up should be things you've already been in conversation with them about. They've either asked it of you or you've brought it up to them in these standing meetings that you've had. That's what we're doing. This is about your skill in our coffee shop and the merit of your work in the economy of this closed system of our brand, our coffee shop. That's what this is about. And so at that point, it's more of a formality. If you've already got a raise structure that you're kind of following through with and you need a performance review, then it's a formality. But we're constantly talking about work at work. We're encouraging, we're facilitating success, we're clarifying, we're equipping, we're paying attention to advances we're tracking performance all along the way. And that is just all the kind of foundations of a healthy relationship in the coffee shop. So meetings are necessary, I think. Meetings can be really frustrating when they're done poorly, but when they come from the right place, deliver the right information, conducted the right way for the people involved in them, they can actually change the business and the people for the better in profound ways. So I hope that this was helpful today. Let me know. I would love to hear your experience with meetings. How have they gone in your coffee shop? What are some things you feel could improve? Whether you're a barista or an owner, talk to me. Email chris@keystotheshop.com. If you're interested in any kind of coaching or consultation, it could be just general upkeep of your business, or you have a specific issue that you really need some advice and some guidance on, and you want to engage with Keys to the Shop consulting on that, email chris@keystotheshop.com and let's have a conversation and see what can be done there. And with that, that is the end of our show, everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me Let me know if you put some of this into practice as a result of this podcast. I would love to get some updates on how it's going and what it renders for your business. It's always great hearing from you. So don't forget to subscribe and share the show with friends and family on social media. When you share on social media, it really makes a big difference because there's tons of people who don't know about this podcast, and it would be great for them to dive into the content that has been amassed here. So sharing is caring and all that. So anyway, have a great one. And as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.